On my lunch break, I walked into my home and found my husband and our neighbor inside my bathtub. I locked them both inside and called her husband to come over. There are moments in life that change you forever in an instant. Moments when everything you believed about your world breaks apart right in front of you, leaving you standing in the ruins. My moment arrived on a completely normal Tuesday, one where all I planned to do was drive home and pick up some paperwork I had carelessly forgotten. Before I go further, I would love to know where you're tuning in from. Please write your city or state in the comments below. I'm always amazed by how far these life stories reach. My name is Marina Hale, and at 34 years old, I truly believed I was living a stable, comfortable, and almost ideal life. I had been married for 8 years, lived in a beautiful townhouse in a quiet subdivision near the edge of the city, and had neighbors I considered close friends. I worked as a claims adjuster for a major insurance company, and my routine was predictable and safe. That morning, I rushed out the door like usual. Evan Hale, my husband, stayed in his home office, something he had been doing for months. Welcome to Clara's Stories, where I share new life lessons daily. If you subscribe and like this video, it genuinely means a lot to me. Now, let's return to the story that will probably keep you listening until the end. I'll see you tonight, honey. Evan shouted from his study as I closed the door. I never imagined those would be the last normal words spoken between us. What I was about to discover would not only end my marriage, but change the way I saw myself forever. My life was organized, steady, and free of surprises. At 6:30 every morning, I brewed our coffee while Evan showered. We ate breakfast together while watching the news. I left for work, and he stayed in the guest room turned office. We lived in a neat 2-story house at the end of a cul-de-sac. I had chosen every piece of furniture, every color, every detail with careful intention. It was my safe place. Our neighbors were like extended family, especially Sienna Brooks, who lived across the street with her husband Grant and their 2 children. Sienna and I had become close over the past 3 years. We had coffee on Sundays, borrowed ingredients from each other, and helped with little chores when the other was busy. I trusted her. I trusted Evan. I trusted my life as it was. That blind trust became my biggest mistake, and strangely, my biggest turning point. That morning, something felt different. Evan seemed jumpy during breakfast, constantly checking his phone. When I asked if he was all right, his responses were vague. I drove to the office with a sense of unease that I couldn't quite explain. While processing paperwork, I realized I had left important documents at home, documents I needed for a meeting later. I had no choice but to go back. The drive took barely 15 minutes. I expected to run inside, grab the papers, maybe eat a quick lunch with Evan, and return to work. But life often twists even the simplest plans. As I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was Sienna's car parked in my driveway. Strange. She always parked directly in front of her house across the street. I unlocked the door. Silence washed over me immediately. Too quiet. Evan always played music while he worked, and if Sienna were visiting, I would expect conversation or laughter. "Evan?" I called out. No answer. I checked the kitchen. Empty. Their shoes weren't in the hallway, which they usually left there whenever Sienna visited. Then I heard it. The sound of running water in the master bathroom. The bathroom Evan and I had shared for 8 years. My first thought was that Evan was showering. But where was Sienna? Why was her car here? My heartbeat picked up as I climbed the stairs. I made excuses in my mind. Maybe her bathroom wasn't working and Evan offered ours. Maybe there was some odd emergency. Anything to protect the life I believed in. I reached the bedroom, the door slightly open, water running loudly. And then voices. Quiet. Intimate whispering. My hand shook. Part of me wanted to turn around and pretend I had never come home. But the other part, the part that needed answers, pushed me forward. I placed my hand on the bathroom door, steadying myself, and pushed it open. What I saw was more than betrayal. It was the end of the person I had been. There was no preparing for it. No handbook on how to react when the 2 people you trusted most violate that trust in the most personal way imaginable. There they were, Evan and Sienna, in my bathtub, in my house. In the space I had created with so much care. Their bodies intertwined, completely absorbed in their own hidden world. They kissed with a passion I hadn't seen from Evan in years. His hands moved over her like it was second nature. This wasn't new. This wasn't accidental. I froze. My brain refused to accept what I was seeing. It felt unreal, like a scene unfolding on a screen instead of in my home. Then Sienna opened her eyes and saw me. Her expression changed instantly from desire to horror. Evan followed her gaze, and when he saw me, he went still. "Marina," he whispered, as if my name could undo what I was seeing. but something inside me snapped. Not my heart, but the quiet, compliant version of me he depended on. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Instead, a calm washed over me. Sharp, controlled, almost unfamiliar. "Stay exactly where you are," I said, my voice steady and cold. Evan tried to get out of the tub. "Marina, wait, I can explain." "Don't move," I repeated, and the tone alone made him stop. I closed the bathroom door and locked it. The click echoed through the bedroom like a warning. "Marina, what are you doing?" Sienna's voice trembled behind the wood. "Stay in there and think about what you've done," I replied coolly. "I have calls to make." I picked up my phone, searched for a familiar number, one I had dialed hundreds of times, for dinner plans, for neighborhood favors, for friendly chats, but never for something like this. Grant answered on the second ring. "Hi, Marina, everything okay?" "Grant," I said calmly, "I need you at my house right now. There's something you need to see." And that was the moment everything changed. Grant arrived faster than I expected. I barely had time to sit down before I saw him jogging across the street, confusion written all over his face. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. "Marina, what's going on? You sounded off." I looked at him. This man who trusted his wife, who waved at us every morning, who talked to Evan about lawn care and football. My voice didn't shake. "They're upstairs," I said. "In my bathroom." At first, he didn't understand. Then something shifted in his eyes, fear mixed with denial. "Sienna? Evan?" he asked, as if saying their names separately might make the truth impossible. "Yes," I replied. "Together." He stared at me for a long moment, his jaw tight, breathing shallow. "Show me." We climbed the stairs silently. Every step felt heavy. When we reached the bedroom, he stopped in front of the bathroom door and placed a shaking hand on the knob. From inside, we heard muffled whispering, panicked, frantic. Grant looked at me. "You locked them in?" "Yes," I said simply. He inhaled sharply, then turned the knob. It was locked as I'd left it. "Sienna," he said, voice trembling but strong. "Open the door." There was a pause. Then her voice, small, ashamed. "Grant, please, I can explain." "You'll explain when I see you," he snapped. "Open it." I unlocked the door but stepped aside, letting him be the one to push it open. The door swung wide, and there they were, wrapped in towels now, but still dripping, still guilty, still unable to erase what they'd been caught doing. Evan looked pale. "Grant, man, listen." Grant didn't let him finish. "Don't you dare call me man." Sienna's eyes were red, filled with tears she had no right to. "Grant, please, it wasn't what?" Grant hissed. "A betrayal? An affair? Something you'd been doing under our noses?" Silence, the worst kind of confirmation. Evan tried again. "Marina, please, this isn't what you think." I met his eyes with a calm he didn't recognize. "Evan, I saw enough, and you weren't confused about what you were doing." Sienna sank onto the closed toilet lid, head in her hands. "This was a mistake," she murmured. "A huge mistake." Grant exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "How long?" Neither of them answered. "How long?" he repeated, louder this time. Evan swallowed. "A few months." Grant closed his eyes as if the words physically hit him. I felt nothing. No shock left, only clarity. Sienna reached toward him, but he stepped back. "Don't," he said sharply. "Do not touch me." The room felt too small, too stale, too full of lies. Finally, Grant said, "We're leaving. Get dressed." Sienna hesitated. "Grant, get dressed." They gathered their clothes in silence and walked out of the bathroom. Grant followed her with a hollow expression, the expression of a man whose world had just been shattered. I stayed behind as Sienna hurried down the stairs. Evan lingered at the doorway of our bedroom, as if unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. Grant paused before leaving and looked back at me. "I'm so sorry, Marina," he said softly. I nodded. "This isn't your fault." And then he was gone, guiding his wife out of my house like someone escorting a stranger. When the door closed and their footsteps faded, the silence felt deafening. Evan turned toward me, guilt clouding every inch of his face. "Marina, please, can we talk?" I stared at him, this man I had loved, trusted, built a home with. But the moment I saw him in that bathtub, something shifted inside me permanently. "We'll talk," I said calmly, "but not now." He took a step toward me and I held up my hand. "Evan, don't." He froze. I walked past him, grabbed my purse, and headed downstairs. "Where are you going?" he asked, voice cracking. "Away from here," I replied. "For now." As I stepped outside, the air felt strangely cool, almost cleansing. My hands shook. Not from heartbreak, but from the adrenaline of reclaiming control. Everything I thought I knew about my life had changed in less than an hour. And this was only the beginning. I didn't drive far, just to a nearby park, the one with long walking trails and quiet benches where I used to clear my mind after stressful workdays. I sat in my car for nearly 10 minutes before I could even breathe normally again. Shock is strange. It doesn't always hit as sobbing or screaming. Sometimes it's a cold, focused stillness, like your emotions have stepped aside so your mind can protect you. And for me, that stillness brought clarity. I took out my phone and started scrolling through my messages with Sienna, and then with Evan. Looking at the timestamps, at the gaps in conversations, at excuses that once seemed reasonable, everything clicked into place. All those mornings, Sienna dropped by just to chat. All those afternoons, Evan said he needed a long break from work. All those times, they both seemed to know things I hadn't told either of them. I had ignored signs because I wanted to believe in the people I loved. Now I couldn't unsee anything. After an hour, I called my sister, Lila. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was cheerful, so different from the storm inside me. "Lila," I said, my voice wavering for the first time since this all began, "I need you." She grew serious immediately. "Where are you?" I told her. "I'm coming right now. Don't move." She arrived within 15 minutes and found me sitting on a bench, staring at nothing. "Marina?" she said gently as she approached. And the second I saw her face, the walls inside me cracked. I broke down, completely. Sobs tore through me, everything I had been holding back rushing to the surface. She wrapped her arms around me. "It's okay," she whispered. "You're okay. I've got you." For the first time in hours, I let myself feel the pain. When I finally managed to breathe again, she asked softly, "What happened?" I told her everything, from walking into the house to locking them in the bathroom to calling Grant. She listened without interrupting once, her expression shifting between shock, anger, and heartbreak. "Oh, Marina," she whispered when I finished. "I'm so sorry. You don't deserve any of this." "I feel stupid," I said. "No, don't you dare. They betrayed you. That's not on you." I nodded, wiping my face. "What are you going to do?" she asked gently. "I don't know yet," I admitted. I can't go home right now." "Then stay with me," she said immediately, "for however long you need." Her certainty steadied me. Before leaving the park, I turned on my phone again. Dozens of missed calls and messages from Evan lit up the screen. "Evan, please come home. We need to talk." "Marina, I'm so sorry. Please, just talk to me. It was a mistake. Please don't give up on us." I stared at the messages, feeling nothing but exhaustion. Lila glanced over. "Block his number," she said. "At least for tonight." "I'm not blocking him," I said quietly. "But I'm not answering either." She nodded and put her hand on mine. "That's fine. You get to decide when you're ready." We went to her apartment and she made me tea, something warm to counter the cold emptiness inside me. She insisted I shower and change into comfortable clothes. She set up her guest room with extra blankets and dimmed lights. I felt fragile, like my entire body was one deep bruise. That night, lying in her guest bed, everything replayed in my mind, over and over. The bathtub, the whispers, the look on their faces when I opened the door. My life had split into two, before and after. And as I stared at the ceiling in the dark, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to the woman who ignored her own intuition. I wasn't going back to being small or quiet or overly forgiving. Evan had made his choices. Now it was time for me to make mine. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Evan's hands on Sienna, the steam from the bathtub, the expression on their faces when they realized they were caught. By sunrise, the numbness had faded and something new had formed in its place. Resolve. I got out of bed quietly, careful not to wake Lila, and made myself coffee in her kitchen. The bitterness steadied me. I sat at the small table and thought through my options. Really thought them through. Go home? No, not until I was ready. Forgive him? Not a chance. Pretend it never happened? Absolutely not. I had spent years putting Evan first. Years bending myself into whatever shape kept our home running smoothly. Years believing loyalty worked both ways. Now I finally understood it didn't. Around 9 a.m., Lila came into the kitchen, still half asleep, hair messy. "Hey," she murmured. "How'd you sleep?" "I didn't," I admitted. She nodded sympathetically. "Do you want me to call in sick? Stay with you today?" "No," I said. "Go to work. I need time to think on my own." She squeezed my shoulder. "I'll keep my phone on. Call if you need anything." After she left, I opened my laptop and searched for divorce attorneys. The act alone made my heartbeat steady, not from fear, but from certainty. I didn't contact anyone yet, but I bookmarked the names. Then I made a list, something I always did when things felt out of control. A blueprint for what came next. Find a lawyer. Gather documents. Separate finances. Prepare statements. Don't let him manipulate me. After writing it down, I felt something I hadn't felt since yesterday morning. Strength. Around noon, I finally drove back to the house. I didn't know if Evan would still be there, but it didn't matter. I needed to face my home again, even if it hurt. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw his car parked exactly where I'd left it. My pulse jumped, but I pushed my shoulders back and walked up to the door. Inside, Evan was sitting on the couch, elbows on his knees, face buried in his hands. When he heard the door open, he looked up and the raw guilt in his eyes almost startled me. "Marina," he said, standing quickly. "Thank God. I've been so worried." I closed the door behind me but didn't move closer. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but flat. "But I'm not here for excuses." He looked like he'd barely slept. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I don't even know how to begin." "Then don't begin with excuses," I cut in. "Begin with honesty." He swallowed hard. "Okay." There was a long, heavy pause. "It started months ago," he admitted. "I never meant for it to happen, but Sienna and we got close." I felt a flicker of disgust. "Close?" I repeated. "In my bathtub?" He winced. "It was wrong, I know. I'm ashamed of myself." "You should be." He rubbed his hands over his face. "It wasn't about you. You didn't do anything wrong. I was stupid. I was selfish. I don't even know who I've been lately." I stared at him. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. Finally, he whispered, "I love you, Marina. I want to fix this. Please let me fix this." The calm inside me held firm. "I'm glad you want to fix something," I said quietly, "but it won't be this marriage." His face crumpled. "Marina, please, I'm filing for divorce." He broke. Completely. "Marina, don't do this. I can change. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. Just please, don't leave." I took a deep breath and felt my voice strengthen. "You left first. You just didn't walk out the door." He stepped toward me, but I moved back. "I'm not giving you another chance to break me," I said. "I'm done." The finality in my voice seemed to hit him like a physical blow. His expression collapsed into helplessness and grief. But I didn't let myself soften. I'd spent too many years cushioning his feelings. This time, I was choosing myself. "I'm going to pack some things," I said, "and then I'm going back to Lila's." He didn't stop me. He just stood there, quietly crying while I walked past him. I went upstairs, packed a suitcase, grabbed the essentials, and took one last look at the bedroom I once loved. Then I walked out without looking back. As I drove away, my hands trembled, but not from fear, from liberation. I was stepping into a new life, one that didn't include betrayal disguised as love. And this was only the beginning of my transformation. The next few days moved strangely, slow and fast at the same time. I stayed with Lila, worked remotely, and kept myself busy. Busy was safer. Busy meant my thoughts couldn't drag me back into the bathtub scene on repeat. On the third morning after leaving Evan, I finally met with an attorney. Her name was Rachel Durand, sharp-eyed and calm, the kind of woman whose presence alone made you stand straighter. I told her everything from the affair to the moment I found them, and she listened carefully, tapping notes into her tablet. When I finished, she closed the cover and said plainly, "Marina, you have a strong case, and you're doing the right thing. We'll proceed on your terms." Her confidence steadied me. After signing the initial paperwork, I walked out of her office feeling lighter. Still hurt, still healing, but no longer powerless. On my way back to Lila's, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Hello?" There was a long pause. "Marina, it's Grant." I pulled over instinctively. "Hi," I said softly. "How are you holding up?" He let out a humorless laugh. "Not great, but I wanted to check on you. What happened wasn't just done to me. It happened to both of us." I closed my eyes. "I'm sorry you're going through this too." He exhaled shakily. "Sienna's staying with her sister. She keeps texting me, saying she wants to talk. I can't even look at her right now." "I understand," I said. "I can't look at Evan either." "Yeah." Another pause. "Listen, I'm not trying to intrude on your life. I just needed someone who gets it." "I get it," I said quietly. "More than I wish I did." We talked for a few minutes about logistics, the shock, the anger, the numbness. It was strangely comforting to talk to someone whose life had blown up at the same time and in the same way. Before hanging up, he said, "If you ever need anything, or if you just need someone who understands, I'm here." "Same goes for you," I replied. We ended the call, and for the first time since the affair, I didn't feel completely alone. That afternoon, I returned to my house briefly. Rachel said I needed to photograph belongings and document certain shared assets. I expected Evan to be there, but the house was empty. Silent. Better that way. As I walked through the living room, I realized how much this home no longer felt like mine. The walls felt too familiar and yet foreign at the same time. The energy was different, like the house itself remembered what happened in it, and I could feel that memory in the air. I took my photos quickly and went upstairs to grab a few more personal items. When I walked past the bathroom doorway, I froze. The sight of that room, the place where everything shattered, made my chest tighten. I stepped inside anyway. I made myself. The tub had been cleaned, the towels replaced, the room reset as if nothing had happened. But I remembered. My body remembered. And I felt something shift again. Another layer of grief falling away, replaced by a growing core of strength. This is not the room where I broke, I whispered to myself. This is the room where I woke up. I left the bathroom, closed the door firmly behind me, and packed the last of my things. On my way out, I noticed a note on the kitchen counter in Evan's handwriting. I didn't touch it. Whatever apology or plea it contained wouldn't change my decision. Back at Lila's apartment that evening, she cooked dinner and played music to distract me. I appreciated it more than I could say. Later, as I sat on the couch with a blanket around me, I checked my phone and saw a message from Grant. Grant, how did things go today? I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, me. Productive. Hard, but productive. A moment later, same here. Today was the first day I felt like maybe I'll survive this. I replied, me, you will. His last message came quickly. So will you. I sat with those words for a while. They felt unexpectedly comforting. As I put my phone down and looked around Lila's dim, warm living room, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving. I was changing, becoming someone stronger, someone clearer, someone who refused to live quietly inside someone else's lies. And I had no idea that the next step in my transformation was about to happen sooner than I expected. A week passed. A full week of paperwork, calls with attorneys, dividing accounts, and packing small pieces of the life I was dismantling. A week of sleeping in Lila's guest room, drinking too much tea and not enough water, and relearning the quiet moments of being alone. Every day hurt a little less. Every morning, I woke up feeling slightly more like myself, and strangely, like someone new at the same time. Then, near the end of that week, something unexpected happened. I was at Lila's kitchen table reviewing some documents when there was a soft knock at her apartment door. She glanced at me. Expecting anyone? No, I said. She opened the door, and there stood Grant Brooks. He looked exhausted, like sleep had become optional for him, too. His hands were shoved into his jacket pockets, shoulders tense. Grant? I said, stepping closer. Is everything okay? He gave a small, uneasy smile. I hope this isn't inappropriate. I just needed to talk to you. Lila looked between us, then said, I'll be in my room if you need me, and slipped away. Grant stepped inside, and I offered him the chair across from mine. He sat, rubbed his face, and exhaled heavily. I got served today, he said. Sienna filed her response. It made everything feel real, final. I'm sorry, I said softly. He shook his head. No, I'm not here for sympathy. I've been trying to hold things together, but today it felt like everything collapsed all over again. We sat in silence for a moment. Then he said, Marina, can I ask you something? Something honest? Of course. He met my eyes. How are you actually doing? Not the strong version, the real version. I hesitated, then told the truth. I'm hurting, but I'm healing too. Some days I feel steady, some days I feel like I'm made of glass, but I'm trying, he nodded slowly. Same. We talked for nearly an hour about the betrayal, the shock, the strange moments of guilt that neither of us logically should have felt, and the quiet parts of starting over. It was the first time in days I felt truly understood without explaining anything. When the conversation quieted, he looked at me with a sincerity that made my stomach flutter in a way I wasn't expecting. You know, he said, when all this started, I thought I'd never feel normal again. But you make it feel like there's a way through this. I smiled, small but genuine. You've been that for me too. He didn't move closer, and I didn't either. There was nothing romantic about the moment, only connection, recognition, the gentle relief of not being alone in the wreckage. After a pause, he stood slowly. I should go. I didn't mean to take up your whole evening. You're not taking anything, I said. You're welcome here. He nodded, once firmly. Thank you, Marina. He walked to the door, but before leaving, he turned back. We're going to be okay, he said softly. Maybe not now, but eventually. I believe that, I replied. And I did. When he left, I sat for a long moment, letting the quiet settle around me. Something warm flickered inside me. Not hope for anything with him. Not yet. Not even something romantic. Just hope for myself. Later that night, I stepped onto Lila's small balcony. The city lights glowed in the distance. Cars hummed softly below. The air felt calmer, like the world had started spinning again at its normal pace. I took a deep breath. In the span of a week, my entire life had been torn open. But in that same week, I had discovered my strength, my clarity, and the possibility of a future that wasn't defined by betrayal. I realized I was proud of the woman I was becoming. Not the quiet, accommodating Marina. Not the one who accepted excuses or ignored her intuition, but the woman who walked away the moment she saw the truth. The woman who chose herself. The woman rebuilding, piece by piece, into someone stronger and wiser. And I knew something with absolute certainty. This ending was also a beginning. A better one.